Hi, my name is Vasudha. Today I have this opportunity to speak as part of the Women in Tech series. As a woman engineer, I have had wonderful opportunities to innovate and create impact over the last 18 years. When I started as an SRAM designer, I was asked to summarize a qualification report while my male colleagues were assigned more mathematical complex tasks. It was upsetting at the time, but a timely advice from my grandpa helped me. He suggested that I speak up for what I wanted. Another advice was to not underestimate the value of any task and give it my 100%. So, what I want to say is that we need to continue to demand what we deserve, stand up for ourselves, and work hard because all of these can change preconceived notions about women in tech in small incremental ways. However, a more effective and far reaching way is to push for more diversity and inclusion at the workplace. Microsoft, where I work, has adopted these as key values. Microsoft spends great effort in elaborating these values for its staff. Real active listening, willingness to question our own assumptions, and openness to diverse perspectives are emphasized. This has created a culture that nurtures respectful participation, a rigorous evaluation of a wide range of ideas, and collaboration. Microsoft embraces diversity, inclusion, and women in tech as contributors to excellence, and that is how it should be. That is the path forward. Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Here we are
Hi
again.
there.
Hi. This is our fourth time that we are doing Women in Tech forum for the SID Display Week, but it's the first time that we are doing it virtual. So welcome to our virtual panel today. We have amazing speakers and a great topic to jump into. My name is Tara Akhavan. Um, I'm with SID for almost 4 years, volunteering for SID, and we've been running, as I said, Women in Tech for the last 4 years. Focus is generally on inclusion and diversity here. We always had interesting discussions. We're going to follow that and keep that up hopefully this time. One thing before we jump into the discussion and intro of our amazing speakers is that I want to thank our sponsors this year. Microsoft is again sponsoring us, and we have XDC as well this year sponsoring the panel. Thanks to you guys. The gender equity, are we doing it? The panel. Um, we are having three very achieved panelists in different areas, different backgrounds. We are trying to keep this panel also as diverse as possible. And it's the first time that we are having a male speaker in our Women in Tech panel. I'm going to let our speakers introduce themselves, each for 2 or 3 minutes. I'm going to start with you, Sepi. Can you please give us a little bit of information about yourself and the background?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tara and SID and Display Week. It's so great to be here and including me part of this incredibly important conversation. My name is Sepi De Nasiri. I'm the founder and CEO of Women of MENA in Technology. A little bit about myself. I've been in tech or working in tech for more than 16 years. I do not have a technical background. I'm more focused on business and doing social good and creating impact. Throughout my career, my main focus has always been empowering and elevating women in tech. So it is where the future is when it comes to workforce. And so being part of the table and creating also seats for others is really important. So I certainly am aligning with that. I'm Persian, Iranian, moved from Iran to Europe and then from Europe to US. So currently residing in San Francisco, supposedly the hub of technology. And I'm looking forward to this incredible conversation. Thank you, Tara.
Thanks, Seppi. Thank you for accepting our invitation and to be here. We are very excited to hear about your story. Bev, do you mind going, please?
No, of course not. Thanks again for inviting me to take part in this interesting collaboration. My name's Bev Brown. I'm an organic chemist by training. I worked half of my life in multinational chemical companies in senior roles and half of my life in startups. Both present different pros and cons, and hopefully we'll touch on that during the conversation this afternoon. So I'm very interested to take part and interested in the general subject of women in the workplace. So I think we're up for an interesting conversation, and it'll be interesting to get Bob's take as a man in this conversation. So over to Bob.
You're located in London, right? Usually we would be.
I'm actually a Scot located in Manchester, so a wee bit far north for me.
True. But we would have been meeting each other, and usually at Display Week, this would be the time that we would get together. But now we are all staying in our countries. That's
yeah, it would be nice to meet, wouldn't it? But
that is true.
Interesting times.
Right. Thank you, Bev. Thanks for accepting our invitation. Bob, can you give us a little bit more information about yourself, the background, and then we'll get into interesting questions we have for you in particular.
Sure. Well, it's unusual. It's the first time I've ever been the token man, but it is an unusual situation for me. I'm
a minority, huh?
Yeah. But as I'll explain a little bit, that's not unusual for me. I'm a display veteran. I've been in the display business since before IBM had a PC. That's my claim to fame. Been involved in monitors all of that time. And I started off in sales and marketing in the industry, ran a company selling monitors in Europe, and 26 years ago I started my own company, Meko, which is a market research consultancy and publishing company. This would have been my 26th SID display week, had it taken place physically. And I will be attending the business conference this week. And my claim to fame is that I've written more words than anybody else that I can find in the SID press office about display week. So I'm over 300,000 words over that 26 years. So been observing and watching the industry for a long time. That's my background.
Thank you very much, Bob. We are very excited and thrilled to have you. As I said, I have been part of a lot of inclusion and diversity discussions before that we had men and women on the panel, but this year in particular at SID, Display Week, this will be the first time that we are having someone from the majority part of the equation sitting on the minority panel. So I would actually want to start with you, Bob. So I want to know, actually, why did you accept our invitation to be on this panel? Why is this topic close to your heart? And if you don't mind, let us know a little bit more about why do you think, I know you're a big supporter, that's why we invited you, but I want to know, why do you think it's important to have women and men be involved in the Women in Tech inclusion discussions?
Well, I'm here because Shri invited me, and Shri can have, But when I thought about it, what could I contribute? Clearly, there's a question there. How would I know? First of all, I have 3 daughters, and nobody can tell me there is anything that they can't do if they choose to do it and if they're capable of doing it. And my 3 granddaughters. So I have a strong feeling for that. I'm used to being surrounded by women. With 3 daughters and a wife, it's not unusual for me. And in my business career, the last 26 years, been running my own company, and in market research, publishing, in technology and in displays, always about displays. That's a field which women are absolutely equal, and it's been my experience over that time that I've employed many more women than I have men. And one of the things I'm proudest of, my company has never become a mega corporation or changed the world, but I've changed quite a few lives, and especially the lives of women who've worked for me, where I believe I've been able to push them and encourage them and develop them in ways which perhaps they didn't think they were capable of. And I think that's an important point. So that's why I'm here.
That's really, and I want to know from your point of view, why do you think men have a part? So I know the topic is close to your heart because you have daughters and granddaughters, and I've heard this before from colleagues and friends when they have daughters that we think more about more cautiously. But um, what do you think men's role is in this whole equation? Because we've been talking to a lot of successful women in this panel before. It's amazing to hear their stories. It's good for the younger generation to learn how to pave their path to the top. But I think it's also a bit about the cultural change. Right? We are changing a bit of the mindset, a bit of the work environment, the way we collaborate. And I want to know about from your perspective and your view and your experience, how do you see men's role in this inclusion?
Well, the reality is that in senior positions in this industry, men do dominate. There's no question. So they do have the authority and the means and the power to change things. Absolutely, women can change things for themselves, but as it stands at the moment, especially in some geographies, it's different in different geographies. But in many geographies, the industry is totally dominated by men. So you absolutely have to have the men open to understanding the power of the women that they can employ and work with, and including their teams, to allow them to get their best results for their companies and their employers. So I think it's as simple as that. There's a huge opportunity that, if you exclude half the workforce or the potential workforce, you have no chance of getting the best.
That's true. Thanks, Bob. I'm going to continue with Seth because you have a long track record of building companies, selling companies, building new companies, and starting new companies, particularly focusing on inclusion and diversity and tech specific. So I want to know, since you started being involved and thinking about this topic, which was what, 7, 8 years ago?
Yeah, more than that. And 2011 was, so long time. And it started certainly before that as well. One of the things when I look back 9 years or almost 10 years ago, because that's when the shift happened in companies and individuals looking at where are these women? Where are the women in tech? And for me personally, I would go to conferences and I was one of the 4 women who were as attendees. We're not even talking about being on the stage, right? So we have come a long way as an industry, as individuals, as companies, that now we are pushing that envelope. We are changing. We want to intentionally making changes in regards to this particular challenge. So looking at where we were back then and versus where we are today, again, we didn't used to have these type of panels or speakers, women speakers or women attendees for conferences, particularly for tech. And then later on, and I call it a movement, when the movement happened and we started focusing and bringing more women into technology. For me personally, I mean, I got involved because I was complaining too much. My friends just said, every day talking about this. Every time you go to a conference, you say there isn't anyone that looks like you, and why don't you do something about it? And so they connected me to someone at that time who had this passion project called Women 2.0, and I looked at what they were doing and the programs that they had started here in San Francisco, and said, let's do this full time. So the founders became full-time. I joined the team as the VP, and we actually started a media company around this whole movement. And this is before, all these different women in tech organization or women focused on technology organizations were alive. So 10 years in, certainly we have come a long way with that. But looking at the work we did at Women Too, I can tell you that 10 years, almost 10 years later, the unicorns we call today who have gone IPO, like Stitch Fix, Rent the Runway, Eventbrite, these female founders back in the days were in our community. They were just shopping. They were really, really in their early days of raising money and building a company that's now is multi-million dollars worth of, and has gone basically public. And that's a great way to look at it, that when you're building an environment where you can support, when you can create resources, things will change. And we are seeing the changes that now, looking at it today, we are investing more in women. There are actually particular organizations just focused, or investment funds that are just focused on investing into female founders. Companies have shifted the way they're looking at hiring, or where they're tapping into their talent acquisition, looking at different organizations where they're posting their job posting. Used to be Craigslist or monsters.com, and now you're posting into communities where you can find the diversity that you're looking for. So I think the shift has absolutely, in the last 8-9 years, has happened. To what level? You have to look at the numbers, right? And then the numbers tell you different stories with all the efforts and all the movements that have come in place. But certainly, it looks different today than what it looked like 10 years ago. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Even from my experience attending CES and Play Week SID in the last 5 years, I would say, as an attendee or a speaker or say someone which is on the floor, I do feel the difference as well. So I'm hopeful that we are moving in the right direction. I had this question to ask you later, Sepi, but now that it came up, I want to ask a question about. So okay, we will see the numbers say different things, and of course different in different countries. What do you think we are not doing enough, or we are doing? Is there anything you, from your point of view, running this organization, would like to change?
Yeah. I mean, organizations like Women of MENA in Technology and other organizations out there, they are trying to bring more inclusivity. They're trying to focus on a community, a minority community that hasn't been elevated or doesn't have the resources. So there's a lot of work being done. What I see that we're doing differently, and I'll focus on different types of organizations. We can't do the way it's been done 10, 20, 30 years ago. That doesn't obviously work, right? So we really have to reinvent, innovating the way we do the work that we're doing. And I'll focus on our organization. We're a nonprofit organization established here in California, but we are a global brand, over 17 cities around the world. I don't operate like a nonprofit, even though we are not, because it hasn't worked, right? There are a lot of organizations out there. So one thing is shifting the way we do work, like any other company is changing the way we do things. Not reinventing the wheel. If somebody is doing something right, the funding should go to them because they're doing it right. Having 50 or 60 or 70 different women in tech organizations who are doing the exact same thing for the same exact community is not doing good, in my opinion, because the funding is so thinned out that each of these organizations don't have the support that they need. And whether they're doing it right, they're taking the right structure in place. Unfortunately, when they're not getting the funding, they cannot continue to do the work that they're supposed to do. So I think, one thing I believe it's been done wrong is trying to duplicate the same thing. We should really look at the market, and we should look at the organizations out there and see what area has not been focused on. And for us, it was the MENA women, right? The Middle East, North African women, who are a diverse community. And we saw that nothing was being made or done for them and the resources that they needed. whether here in the US or globally. So I think that's one thing I would want to point out is, if you are creating any type of resources for women or diversity, please make sure it hasn't been done before and it's not working, then you shouldn't start doing that. And reinventing the wheel is not going to be a good thing either. Try to support them. Try to support and align with your. So I would say that would be one. Collaboration more between organization is something I think we're more competitive, even though we have the same mission in mind, than we are being, collaborative. And I think that's one area that we need to really focus on as organizations, to collaborate with each other for the social impact that we are trying to create, because it's not a competition, and it's more that we are all together wanting to create that impact that's necessary, right? So those would be a few things that I would point out that we should be doing differently.
Thanks, Sepideh. Very good points. You're right. There are now so many organizations out there, and it's important even for someone who wants to be an attendee or looks for organizations to get support or be part of a community. It's very confusing which one to choose, where to go. So I see that point very much. Well, thank you, Sepi. I have a question for you, Bev. You have been very, because I know a bit about your background and we know each other a bit virtually. I know that you're part of a big corporation for so long, and then recently part of a startup. You have a very long career as a woman in tech. I know that you've experienced being the minority very much, and I want you to share, if you can, one of the biggest challenges you faced being the minority for most of the time in your career, and then maybe a little bit share with the younger audience how to overcome those challenges if they see it in the workplace.
Yeah, so I was thinking about this at some length, and particularly about advice I would give to my younger self starting out again. So I'll finish with the advice to my younger self. But just to set the scene, so I joined ICI in 1986, immediately after completing my PhD. And I was really wet behind the ears. And ICI was a great company, so it was comparable to DuPont in the USA or BASF in Europe. And if you're on the fast track recruitment path, then you got fantastic training. So they trained us on things like creating shareholder value, taking others with you, 360-degree feedback, and it was fantastic. But ultimately, it was a male-dominated hierarchical company. And the number of female scientists was probably around 1 in 20 back in 1986. And I think, the statistics in the UK say that nowadays it's probably around 10% of the senior scientists are women. So it has improved over the past 35 years, but not at a rate that you would really have expected. I would have expected more women in technology now, and that really isn't the case, and
Right.
particularly at senior levels, Tara. So that's a bit disappointing. In ICI, and I think it's probably quite common with other large companies, I realised quite quickly that if you didn't want to be mansplained, sorry Bob, so if you were in a meeting with many men and you wanted to have your idea taken up by the senior managers at that meeting, then you often had to be much better briefed than your male counterpart, and you had to be prepared to come into a meeting with all of the facts and argue your case based on a very strong factual rationale. And the good thing about a technical community, which I think is more challenging in commercial situations, is that technical managers do listen to the facts. So if you're in a meeting as a woman and you're making sense with factual explanation, I think it goes a long way to essentially establishing your credibility. But I think there's absolutely no doubt that in ICI, the strongest factor for me having a very good career and a very fast track development was that I had a male champion, and that was in both of my first roles in ICI. And I know that my first manager had a daughter who was actually going into science, so I suspect that helped me hugely. So I think had I not had that male champion, I would have had a much tougher time. And so it's difficult for young women going into science if they don't have that benefit. How do they get the same career development rate as their male counterparts?
Right, right. I think that's a very good point. There are two things I got from your very nicely put message. One is, um, again, we need men and women. We need everybody. Like, I
Yes,
hope we don't have to do this next year as women in tech. We just do it people in tech, men and women, because we would not need it. Um, but we need that mindset shift because it's good for everybody. It's good for
it
public.
is.
It's good for everybody, any kind of diversity. Because the more you have different ideas and different brains and different point of views around the table, the better we do. That's proven, right? So that what you're mentioning about like having male champions so that you can go up the ladder, that's a very good point, and I think it's good for younger generation who are starting their career to look for men or women, mentors or champions or someone who can help them. That's very important. Another thing you mentioned was be prepared with the facts. Always try to be precise and brief. Is that what you said? Brief.
I
Um,
think exactly.
make your point quickly, otherwise you're going to get mansplained at some point.
Hmm.
So, that's I've lived that, and I think that's also a very great advice. Do you see it getting better, Beth? Like from I know it's getting better in terms of 0.5% to 10%. Is that the
It's getting better, but the rate isn't very fast. I mean, one of the other examples is in a large multinational company. If you compare large company culture versus startup and SMEs, it is very different. So in
right?
multinational companies, I think there's an overt male hierarchy, but the structures and organizational things like pay is very transparent. So when I worked in a large multinational company, I was always paid the same, if not slightly more than my male counterparts, because it was a sort of results driven organization and structure that we had. So that was all very transparent. But in the SMEs, in one instance, I actually had a significant pay gap disparity. And
Yeah.
so my other advice to young people starting in any organization, be it multinational or SME, is if you identify a problem, then raise it face to face with your line manager. It's difficult, but you have to do it, guys. If that's a man or a woman, raise it. So I don't think that's particularly a gender issue. And for me, I had just two examples that I wanted to share with you. The first one was in ICI. I was managing my own research project, and my line manager came to me one day and said, "Oh, your male colleague is going to report your results at a large, prestigious international conference." And the reason he gave me was, you have enough of a profile in the industry and in the company. This guy needs a hand up.
Oh my God,
And
you do.
yeah, so we had a sort of robust discussion about it, and it was reversed, the decision.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think as a woman particularly, I don't know if Bob wants to comment on this, but I think you have a sort of reluctance to raise some points because you're worried that your career will be thwarted, and it's difficult, isn't it? But my advice would be have it out face to face as quickly as the issue arises. The second point, is an issue. My husband was also employed as a commercial manager in the same company, and he was relocated through a sort of significant promotion. And the two managers involved, my manager and his manager, decided that without any discussion with me, they would find me a job at his new location. So, the fact that I was earning more than my husband and had a more promising career just didn't enter the equation. So again, that had to be raised face to face with the line managers, which was very uncomfortable, but it was resolved and we didn't move.
Perfect.
But it's difficult. So my advice to a young person starting in an SME or a multinational chemical company is try and find a mentor. If you can't find a female role model, try and find a male champion. Be better informed than your male colleagues if you can be, because it helps to make your case and be taken seriously. Be kind and personable. Have many male friends and supporters, but be assertive, because be assured, if you allow yourself to be walked over, you will be. And I think that would be my sort of advice.
Thank you. Thanks, Bev. It's very interesting. Thanks for sharing the interesting stories as well. I think, at least me myself, I'm learning through all these discussions I have with you as well. And it's you're always. I'm not sure if it's a woman thing or a man thing, but I feel like there's always a lot into raising a point. It's very hard to have those face-to-face discussions, as you say, and women maybe are more worried to get labeled or lose their jobs or get
Yeah.
it or whatever. So that's actually uh, sets us for my next question from Bob, because you are observing this from the other side. Like, what does your experience say dealing with women, trying to grow them, mentor them, having a lot of them in your organization throughout the years? What are the differences? Have you even at all felt any difference between men and women in working in tech?
Oh, certainly. The point Bev made about assertiveness is very clear one to me. I sent female staff on assertiveness courses because I couldn't get them to reasonably represent their own point of view to me, even though I wanted to hear it. And I had to train them in how to be assertive. I never had to send any of my male employees on an assertiveness course. They were always pretty assertive about what they wanted and what they expected and how they wanted it to be done. But a lot of women that I've employed, and I haven't employed senior executives, these were managers, supervisors, or data entry or any other position in SME. But very often you really had to teach them how to be assertive, how to be reasonable about what they needed, because I knew that if they weren't assertive in the long term, that was going to come back and bite me. You know,
Yeah.
lack of assertiveness, in the end, they're going to get fed up on leave, or there's going to be another problem comes up. It was my experience very early on as a manager that was the case, that if people are not assertive and you don't understand their genuine needs, and then you're building up trouble for the future. So that was a big one. And I often found I had to push women more than men to realize their potential. I can think of several women that I employed over the years where I really had to work very hard to get them to invest in themselves, to develop themselves, and to really make the most of the talents that were clear and evident to me. I could see the potential they had. I could see the intelligence or the diligence or whatever the aspect of their character that was particularly useful to me in the work environment. To get them to exploit that and develop and push their careers forward was always hard work. And sometimes I think it almost felt like bullying. You'd be pushing hard to try to get them to do something where they weren't comfortable. And it wasn't just themselves. They were worried about what the family would say, what their husband would say, what other people would say. You say, look, this is about you. You've got the potential to do this. Push yourself on. But sometimes it was hard to do, because as a man in a position of power, I felt as though that was almost bullying, almost.
That's a very interesting point. But why do you think it was like that for men, for women? Like, why is it that they don't see the potential you're seeing in them, or they see it but they are worried or shy? Like what is the reason in your experience that you're not raising to the level that you expect them, or you see the potential?
I think it's a lack of expectation that because society or their families don't expect them to have careers that I thought they were capable of.
Right.
They expected them to be a wife, or family was always a big issue.
Right.
That learning, I had to learn how to be reasonable in helping women to develop their career while maintaining the family ambitions that they had. You know,
Right.
it took me a long time to get a hang of, no, I know you can't work late because you've got to collect the children from school. You
Right.
know, it took a while for that to really register with me that you really do have to collect them from school. You can't hold on for another 15 minutes in the meeting, or and to not allow that to reflect on how I thought they were performing the role, if you understand that. So those were the things I had to deal with. Family was a big issue. Husbands who felt they didn't really want their wives to do very well because perhaps they didn't want their wives to be better paid or have more status in their job than they had. Those were real issues.
Yeah.
That's true. That's actually that goes back to the story that Bev said about your husband getting a promotion. So, how did your husband feel about giving that promotion? Uh,
He was he was not as interested in hard work, shall we say? So he wasn't too bothered.
okay, but that's true. That's a very good point, and I think we talk about that a bit less, right? We
Hmm.
have panels, we focus a bit less. Husband society, what is the picture? What is it expected from women as good wives or good women in technology or work? And if there is this uh, glass ceiling of what people expect from you, and you only have a limited room for raising, and then after that is that's it. You reached it and you're good.
Hmm.
Um, that's a very interesting point, and again that's why we need in all of these diversity discussions, whether it's the gender based, it's the background, ethnicity, color of skin, or any type of diversity we're talking about, we need everybody to be part of this shift, right? We cannot make a shift just by sitting a bunch of women and thinking that we need to reach a high potential. Um, Thank you, Bob. That was a very good point. Um, Bev, I have a question for you about um, I asked a similar question from Sepi. In your experience, is there anything we're not doing and we're not doing it right? Like with all these things that we have on inclusion and women in tech, is there something which is missing, or is there something worse than that? Is there something that we are hurting women doing something by pushing too much, by maybe hiring people in a position, women in a position, maybe they are not, if they're not suitable for that position, and we just want to mark that we have inclusion or we have.
Yeah, it's a difficult question, Tara, because it is so technology and workplace specific, isn't it?
Right.
I think if you look at the statistics, I think the cultures in the US and the UK are very different. But
Right.
in senior management positions at CEO level, both countries have a 7% female CEO. So that says to me that you know, we need the assistance of senior men to help pull through and promote women. Because
Right.
if it was all down to women, then I believe that the percentage of women in senior positions would be higher than 7%. So
Right.
for me, that's saying that you know, women might be sort of battling away and you know, paddling as hard as they can with their feet underwater and like swans, but unless we get some help from above, there's only so much you can do. And I know that at director level, over the past 20 years, the number of female directors has in fact doubled. But at the CEO level, I think we still need to be doing much more. And how do you do that? I mean, there's been a big survey by the Royal Society of Chemistry in the UK, which surveys men and women. And if you look at the responses of the men, they're quite different to the women. So, for example, the same question was asked of men and women. You know, why aren't women progressing at the same rate as men? And the women were talking about, glass ceiling and less opportunities for them. And a number of men actually said, well, it's women's choice to have a family and leave the workplace, and pretty much that's their decision, and so be it. So I think the men do have a very different perception from why women make these decisions.
Right. Right. Very interesting. Is that true, Bob?
Yeah, yes, there are different perceptions, but yeah, and as you say, you need action from the top, as I said earlier on. Yeah.
So in ICI, we used to have a working women's forum, which was perceived by the men as a bit of a joke. And if you were part of this, it was difficult, because when I actually had a baby and was invited to join this working women's forum, a lot of my senior colleagues who had the greatest respect for me were sniggering at this group of women and saying, they're a bunch of lefty feminists, and why would anyone want to join this?
Yeah.
So it's difficult, isn't it?
I could see that. That's true. That's how many years ago?
That was in 1997.
Okay.
So just over 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think it's difficult enough for white women, but I think women of ethnic background have got a much, much harder job. So I think, as a white woman who had a male champion, not only in my first job, but in my second job, I've had a fairly easy ride. But for, I think, women of ethnic background, it's much, much more difficult.
Right. That's
and
why
trying to mentor and championing, women in that situation.
That's really true. So I think that brings us to what Sepi is doing. The mission of your organization is really to create a community and focus for underrepresented women, particularly
right.
Middle Eastern, North African. So is there any story you want to share with us? Is there anything you think is worth sharing in your experience in the last, I think, 5, 6 years running this organization? Especially
women. So, one of the most interesting thing I will tell you is we started again, I want to pinpoint that when you do something, don't reinvent the wheel, do something new that doesn't exist already. And in 2018, we launched our Women of MENA in Tech conference, the first conference ever. It's first of its kind, even 2 years in. There's nothing like it still out there, where the Middle Eastern women who are working in tech and doing incredible things, come on stage and talk about their challenges. And we were actually hosted here in Silicon Valley, and a company just took over and sponsored the entire thing, all day conference with food, beverage, anything you could imagine a conference needs. One of the interesting things I will tell you that was so different is our speakers, who were from all across 100 to 500 Fortune, companies or startups and investors, is every single one of them said, Sepi, when I looked out into the audience for the first time, the people looked like me. I was talking and creating and inspiring people and telling them the challenges I had, and they were nodding their head because they understood, because they're going through that challenge right now.
Yeah.
And so, representation matters, and vice versa. The attendees said, the first time I've gone to a conference where the people look like me. So I could imagine being someday that VP of engineering, or, the founder of this company, or an investor for startups, because I now can see myself out there already. And it gives me goosebumps even today to think about that, we think the things that we are doing are just not that significant. But when you see the power of a word or a work that you're doing is inspiring so many, it is a change. And that for me was like, okay, we're doing something right here. We are changing mindsets. And what we looked at after that, and that continued, is when we put these women on stage, even in smaller forums, not like at large conferences, but, and Tara, you have had that experience, is that their own companies realize what a gem they had in their own as an employee.
Yeah.
And then they were finally looked at and promoted. They were suddenly being offered other opportunities to take part in within their company. They gave them seats at the table for their voice. And I think that's really important to look at these stories. And I think that happens even, after today's conversations, and the audience who's listening to this is going to have an aha moment, and hopefully taking this on and creating impact. It's really important to think that it's not always organizations that are creating impact. It's actually the people who are listening and getting inspired and going back and doing something about it. So I encourage individuals who are working in these companies to take note and see what works. And it's everyone's responsibility for diversity and inclusion. It's not just a hiring manager or recruiter or the CEO of the company. It starts with the employees. We all have a network. We can make sure that our workplace is more safe, that the voices are heard, and also that we hire a diverse team. So when you are referring someone, you're part of that solution. So I think these are some of the stories I would say is very significant, that we don't always look only at the top. Yes, the top is creating the culture or pushing the envelope, but also starts with us, because without us, there is no top. So if you're an employee in a company, you need to push for it. You need to make that noise. So the CEO, unfortunately, doesn't see all the day-to-day things that are happening within the company. They get someone to report to them everything. So whatever that person is reporting, that's all they get to see or hear. I think it's the employees that can make a difference. So if you are, as an employee, thinking, we need more diverse engineers in our engineering team, look into your own network. And if you're a diverse individual, you should be referring. And I know companies today pay a certain percentage to you, encouraging that. So all of us can make a difference every single day in these companies, regardless. And it's up to us as individuals or organizations, and then of course those who have the power to create change, and not doing the same thing that we have done before. Obviously that didn't work. Let's go crazy and do something different.
Yep. Perfect. Thank you, Sepi. That's very true. What you said about the conference kind of reminded me of what Bob said a few minutes ago about the women who kind of were shy to reach the potential, or were not pushing so hard, and they felt like that's not asked from them, or it's not expected. But I think these kind of conferences, these kind of forums, these kind of discussions that we are having is hopefully triggering that culture within the women themselves as well, that that moment that there is no expectation, nothing is set for me, and I can reach or do whatever whatever I like and is my passion or my potential. We only have few minutes left. I'm gonna wrap up, unfortunately, this very interesting, diverse, dynamic discussion we are having. With just one point for the audience, you can ask your questions and type it in, and we're gonna respond from the speakers. If you have any questions, please don't shy away and write it down, type it down for us. I'm gonna just go around table and ask for the last words. If there's anything else you wanna share, or if there's any missing point. Bob, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a small point about the current strange situation we're in with COVID. My company, small company, lots of staff, and I remember sitting in my office one day and thinking, you know, they're all just sitting there at their computers. Why am I spending all this money on rent? And we went virtual about 8 years ago. We got rid of the premises. Everybody worked from home. We were always very flexible anyway as an employer, because that's the way I got good people. But I think that flexibility that is going to teach companies that they're not going to see everybody working in an office in that social environment. What they're going to see is the results of the work of the individuals who are all working on their own. And I'm sure that will show some companies that where they thought the benefit was coming from is not where it was actually coming from, where the good work was coming from. So I think the change in working practice over COVID and this year, this very strange year we're in, could have a really significant effect on opening the eyes of executives to where their real human assets are, if to put it crudely.
Very interesting point. Thank you. I've never thought about it that way. It's actually a very good point. I'm very curious to see what kind of stats or information or data is going to come out next year from all this experience you're having this year. Bev, you want to go next?
Yeah, just picking up on Bob's point, I actually think that I would take to work in a virtual environment. So COVID hasn't really affected my business very much at all. We're all in the labs every day as usual. But I love the human interaction. You know, if you have questions and it's an impromptu one that's just off the cuff, you know, you can raise it there and then with your individuals. We're a sort of fairly sort of touchy-feely organisation. We like each other. But I mean, the thing I would say is that I think that diverse teams with men and women work much better than just one gender. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Men and women think differently. We bring different strengths to the table. And I think there's enough research has been carried out now on the impact financially of diverse teams to show that I think multi-gender teams make more money for the company. So, you know, senior execs and wherever possible should be mixing it up, getting men and women working together. That's my strong view.
Thank you very much, Bev. Sepi, any final words for us?
Yes, I will piggyback on the whole situation with COVID as well. I think there is a huge opportunity right now for companies to become diverse. As we are working from home, as in tech particularly, there is such a privilege to be able to pick your employees and your talent acquisition, not just in your perimeter where you live or where your offices are. Now we are certainly global, and you can pick your employees from a lot of different places. And I encourage that. You know, that will not only help your company to become more diverse because you have people from around the world who have a different focus, different insight, different data to give you. But I also think that it will enable a lot of people. And I'll give you an example. Women right now are suffering from laid off situation in companies. So you have a talent pool to tap into that you never had before. I also think that because of COVID, working from home has given opportunity for those who are caregivers. So if you're a mother, for example, and you couldn't before work at these interesting companies because you had to come into the office, the whole concept of teams have to meet in one place and have that FaceTime is no longer even an option at this point, which also means that those individuals who were perfect employees for you but couldn't come into their office now are available for you to tap into. So I think it's an opportunity for companies. There is no more excuse that you can't find talent because now your talent is the tip of your fingers on your computer. They can be working from anywhere. So you should be also looking at the hiring, the way you're hiring as well. I get goosebumps talking about this one as well because I think it's going to just change the way our teams are, how we are engaging and where we are engaging from. So I encourage companies to hire outside of their cities. And having that perception of you have to come into office has been debunked in the past 4 or 5 months, and because we had to work from home, and you have seen the productivity that has risen because of it as well. So think outside the box on how you're going to start hiring and really think about the dynamic in the teams that you want to create. So, and not just think about women, please think about the diverse cultural backgrounds that you're bringing in, and not just those that are very well known in your country to look into investing, but do diversify really and be very inclusive in who you're hiring as well.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. It was an amazing session. I really enjoyed talking and chatting with all three of you again. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Sepi. Thank you, Bev. It was a great session. Hope to see you virtually or physically next year. Hopefully physically at some point.
Absolutely.
Be nice.
Absolutely.
Have a great time, and we'll be waiting for the questions and answering doing some QA right now.
Thanks,
Again.
Tara.
Thanks very much, Tara.
Thanks, everyone. So nice
Thanks,
meeting you
Bob.
all.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.